Hello, this is What's All About, and in this review we're looking at the latest offering from Avi-8, obviously an aviation brand which I reviewed a number of watches on before. So this is the Hawker Hunter day date, and literally it was released just yesterday, and it's available for pre-order until the 22nd of September. This is 2017, in case you're watching in the future. Pre-order prices are very reasonable, £125. And then after that, after the 22nd of September, the RRP is £155. Now that is actually quite a reasonable price. Avi-8 seem to have gotten their act together with their pricing traditions, because often they provide like very high RRPs and then offer the watches at a much lower price, which cheapens the brand a little bit. So I much prefer it when a brand starts off with the price at a decent RRP to begin with. So £155 this is. So this is obviously a day date Hawker Hunter model, so we'll have a look at it in closer detail and discuss if it's a good value for money watch at £155. So size wise, it's certainly not a small watch by any means. It starts off with a diameter of 45mm. So I've got a approximately 7.5-inch wrist for reference. So 45mm diameter. I have a height of 12mm, and then a lug to lug length of 54.5mm. So it certainly is an impressive watch. Many people will think 45mm probably a bit too big. Some people just won't buy it at all because of the size. Despite the size, it doesn't actually wear humongous. It's quite light as well, 89 grams. So it's quite an easy wear, quite comfortable on the wrist as well, and that's mainly in addition to the weight, thanks to the lovely strap as well. So size-wise, it's definitely very imposing, has a lot of wrist presence. The water resistance is 50 meters or 5 atmospheres, so nothing too crazy or amazing, but it's not marketed as a dive watch, so it's not the end of the world. Just try not to get it too wet. The movement is by TMI. TMI are part of the Seiko group, so the movement is the TMI VX43. It's basically just another quartz movement with a day and date indicator. Obviously, they have a custom. They have created and added a custom day and date wheel, which is a very nice touch to have these locations at 6 and in that specific style. So that's a really nice little touch by Avi-8 for a watch costing this much money. Lug width, we have 22mm, so a very suitable size strap for the shape and size of the watch, and then you get a 2-year warranty as well. Okay, so let's have a look at it in much closer detail and discuss each element. So first of all, the dial. As you can see, it is incredibly detailed and complex, but not. It's detailed and complex in a attractive way. It's not overly, overdone or too harsh or brash. I really like the dial, the design of the dial, and I've actually found myself really impressed with the construction as well. Sometimes Avi-8 have a bit of a cheap kind of feel to them. The only things that I've found to be on the little bit of a cheap side are these fake screws. There's 4 of them, although they are a little bit nicer than the usual fake screw heads that are added. They're still, you can tell that they're not real. And then the depth of the logo as well is a little bit on the thin side, which is a bit disappointing as well. Everything else though is very good. It's obviously multi-layered, very complex, very detailed. So if we have a look at it at a slight angle, you can see our multi-layers. So we have our 0 and 6. I like the usage of a 0. Obviously 0 is more for 24-hour kind of indication rather than 12-hour. So again, another nice little nod to aviation. And I just think it balances with the 6 quite well. But our markers are on the highest level, and that's surrounded by this very nice outer index with hour markers applied on top as well, with a little arrow at 12. Surrounding that, we then have a minute, 5-minute increment marker with a slight texture to it. This top bridge as well, and then we have almost like a turbine kind of element hit just here. It does look kind of metally, but I think it's probably just plastic. But it's still quite striking to the eye, and it looks the part. This like metally turbine bit, and then within that, and we have the day and date indicator windows, which again is a very nice little touch. Obviously extremely custom made just for this watch, which is always nice to see. So we have our vertical day indicator there, and then our date just there with some nice splashes of blue as well. So despite it being very complex, it's very easy to read. The hands are nice and bold, easy to tell the time at a glance. So I've been really impressed by the design of the and also the construction of the dial. Moving on to the case. So the case is primarily brushed, apart from a couple of polished elements. So we have these shoulders to the lugs, and then the bezel, and then these screws in each corner as well. Entire case back is brushed, sides are brushed as well. And then if we look at our crown guards, it's quite an unusual sort of like a plain wing almost shape, which is a nice touch. And then the crown is it gives sort of like a polished kind of finish to it. And we have the RAF roundel at the end as well, which is a very nice nod to the Hawker Hunter plane. So general finishing of the case, I found it to be fairly good, nothing mind-blowing. The edging, probably could be a little bit more refined, but the brushed finish is fairly average. And these screws are actually quite a nice little touch in each corner. The polished finishing is all quite nice and crisp. So there we go. The shape is quite an unusual shape as well. Very obviously inspired by sort of like a clock or something like that on a dashboard of a plane maybe. So quite obviously aviation inspired. Moving on to our case back, so we have the plane itself, the Hawker Hunter, engraved with some various specifics around it, so it's quite detailed, quite nicely done as well. So that's quite a nice level of detail there. Moving on to the strap then, I always find Avi-8 straps to be very, very good, and this is no different. The quality of the leather is lovely. Very nice matte kind of appearance. It's almost like oil tanned finish to it. And we have a few little detail stitches there, which don't really serve any purpose, but they provide a little bit of interest to the eye, and they look pretty nice as well. But yeah, the leather is very supple, very thick as well, you can see there. Very good quality as well, so that's a nice impressive element of the watch. And then a fairly standard tang buckle, which is completely brushed with the Avi-8 logo, just quite deeply engraved there as well. Okay, so let's get the macro lens on then, and we'll have a look at it in much closer detail. So starting off with the dial, let me just change the time so we can see that. There you go. So the date wheel there, you can see either side the previous and the next day. And if we go down here to the date indicator, you can see within the turbine we have the rest of the dates there waiting. So here's that turbine kind of ring. As you can see, pretty nicely done. It does look metal, but when you look at it this close up, you can tell that it is like a plasticky kind of finish to it. So this top bar has the logo, as you can see, a little bit too thin for my taste. When you compare it to the hour marker right next to it, it's a shame they don't make it that thick. And then here's one of those fake screws, which again is a shame that they're not nicer finishing. So here's our outer edge. Nice detailing all the way around here. There we go. Then we have one of our applied numerals. Get it this side. There we go. You can see there, nice depth, good quality as well. Then the other end are 6. And then looking at the hands, big and bold with big black borders. The loom is fairly average on this watch. Nothing crazy to get too excited by. And nice little blue tip on the second hand as well. Okay, so moving on to the case. Here's one of our screws in the corner. And then our brushed top as well. Our polished bezel is very neatly done. And then we can see our little crown guards, plain wing-esque crown guards, and our crown itself. Very easy to use. Nice level of finishing and detailing to that. Here's the lug with the polished top, polished shoulder, and then if we flip it over, you can see the plain and various specifics on the case back, very detailed as you can see. Okay, so just moving on to the leather strap. Here's one of our stitches, and you can see the very matte top to it. There you go, flip it over and we'll see a little Avi-8 impression. And then finally, looking at our buckle, there's Avi-8 logo engraved on the top bar with our brushed finish. Okay, so the Hawker Hunter day date. I've actually found this to be one of the nicest Avi-8s I've ever reviewed, and it also happens to be the cheapest, which is nice. Obviously it's not automatic, it is quartz movement, so for some people that may be a bit of a turn off, or they may not be quite as attracted to it as they could be if it was automatic. But for the price, the RRP of £155, it's actually really good deal. You do also find quite often that Avi-8s, you can find them with a slight discount here and there as well, so you may even be able to get it for slightly cheaper. So I've been really impressed by it. I think it looks great, really well constructed, put together. Sure, there's a couple of minor niggles here and there, but for the price of £155 you can't complain too much, really, can you? So yeah, this was the Avi-8 Hawker Hunter day date, and that's what it's all about.